The Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America, has thousands of runners running for thousands of reasons.
I'm running to raise money for Achilles International, so amputee athletes can keep running too.
For every mother counts, because all women deserve access to quality maternity care.
For St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and every kid with cancer who just wants to be a kid again.
Join Bank of America in supporting this year's runners. Give if you can at BofA.com/help-a-cause. References to charitable organizations is not endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2024.
Spring is here, and you can now get almost anything you need for your sunny days delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a well-groomed lawn delivered, but you can get a chicken parmesan delivered. A cabana? That's a no. But a banana? That's a yes. A nice tan? Sorry, nope. But a box fan? Happily, yes. A day of sunshine? No. A box of fine wines? Yes. Uber Eats can definitely get you that. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
We're back for another week of Talking Ball with Coach Bob Wylie. Coach Wylie, as always, this season's been fun. It's shaping up to be pretty exciting, and we got another great guest today in Kyle Caskey.
Yes. I always look forward to doing this, and watch that Kansas City game on Thursday night, and that was an excellent football game. I thought that San Diego was playing well. I thought Kansas City in the first half, it wasn't as sharp as they probably should have been, right? But then you can tell the championship teams, they came right back in the second half. So I always look forward to exchanging information, and the coaches that you bring in, the guests that we have. I know we have another good one today in Kyle Caskey. And so you can do the introductions, Keith, and let's go.
So Kyle Caskey, I had the opportunity to meet him at the Cool Clinic. He was a speaker there and gave an outstanding presentation on game planning for exotic pressures. And we're going to talk a little bit about blitz pickup today and planning for those types of things. And Coach Caskey began as a player at Texas A&M, went on to GA at Louisiana Monroe, was a recruiting coordinator for Indiana State, went to Ole Miss, then got his first job in the NFL with the Cincinnati Bengals as a quality control coach, then an offensive line coach. In 2014, he moved over to the running backs, took the same job with the Lions and then the Jaguars. So he's made his way around the NFL and college football, and certainly has picked up a lot of experience here. So, Coach, we're happy to have you here today on the podcast to talk about blitz pickup and protection.
Hey, it's great to be here, and I've known Coach Wylie for a long time, and it's really cool to hear the things he has to say, because he sees it from a perspective of a guy who's done it a lot longer than I have, but has also been around a lot of the same people I have. And Coach, I appreciate you having me on.
When we were searching for names to have people on the show, I said he has to be on. He's going to be on. I think what you do, Kyle, in preparation to pick up the blitzes, because I think sacks. People say, well, pressures and sacks. I know sacks really put you behind where you need to be. Pressure, he may miss the ball, but you still may be second and 10. But it's better to be second and 10 than second and 21.
Yeah, I think too. You mentioned sacks, but I think too that there's teams. I think if you watched the Cincinnati Bengals last year, and everybody talks about how many times Burrow was sacked, but think about how many times he was hit too. And the sacks, those get put in the stats, and they put you back. But there's a point where the hits start taking a toll on the guy that's calling the plays for you. And Coach, I know you've said in the past you're as good as that guy, at the quarterback position sometimes, and you want him to be upright all the time. So the sacks and the hits, and I think that's what I've been allowed to do over the past 7 seasons for sure, since I've been a running back coach, is be in charge of blitz and the pressures and the protection plan going into Mondays and Tuesdays when we put our game plan together. And the things I've learned from being with different O-line coaches has allowed me to see things from different perspectives and know that there's not one way to do things, and you just got to be able to find ways, especially with like you said, if your quarterback's really good, you can allow the quarterback to do it. But what if you have a rookie quarterback who's struggling? Then you got maybe it's your center. And then we had a chance in Detroit where we had a backup quarterback and a backup center playing at the time, and Kerryon Johnson, the running back, was helping the quarterback out back there. So got to kind of find ways to do that. And I've worked with you at the Cool Clinic this year, and I did that exotic pressure pickup presentation for the guys. And one of the things, and Coach, I want to hear your opinion on this, because I know you've got a lot of ways to do things. And you play a team like, say, Tampa Bay, and that's where this whole idea came from when I was on the Cool Clinic with you. Is they ran every blitz, every pressure, every front, everything under the moon on third downs, and really on any down, but especially on third downs in 2 minutes. And you would get overload fronts, you would get the split front AA fronts, you would get odd fronts, you'd get spinner fronts, you'd get regular fronts. I mean, and then they would bring things, every combination of blitz under the, in that. So what I did that week was, instead of trying to present it as, hey, they run this blitz the most, they run this blitz the second most, it was, no, there's packages here. So there's fronts and the structure of the defense that shows up. So if you have an overloaded front with 3D linemen on one side and one on the other, and they can mug guys in there, it doesn't matter. But if it's an overloaded front, we have rules for that. If it was a AA front, we had rules for that. If it was a nickel bear front, we had rules for that. And then it just went into all the different things that were starting to show up within those groupings, and understanding when we get that front, this protection adjustment kicks in. So like a lot of teams go to the Abbey calls on AA's, where you have the back go up and block in the A gap, and the line is sliding out, and they just keep sliding to the widest, and then you pick it up that way. But what happens if that doesn't work versus all their AA's? You got to find the adjustments for that week, but at least AA front comes up. There's I think, Coach, I'll let you talk, but it's like you have a checklist of things that happen before you kick that other adjustment in. And if those things don't happen, if you motion a guy across and it's just man coverage, then you just block your protection rules. And Coach, I'd like to hear what you say.
I think, Kyle, you're right on the right course. Obviously, you do a hell of a job with it. And what I can tell you, and I think I mentioned it earlier, I would, in Owen and Casey Wigman, who were two of the best guys I've ever had in the same team together, playing the same spot, we would sit down and we'd go through the film and say, okay, we got these 3 triggers, I call them, that we need to get to. And if we can check the boxes off on all 3, then we're going to have a right to change the protection to what we need to change it to. Mm-hmm. And so that was very helpful. But the thing that was really unique when I was doing what you were doing, or actually was the running back coach at the time. I wasn't the running back coach, but our running back coach at the time. Mm-hmm. We had to play the Jets, okay? And it was Kelly Skipper, I believe. We were playing the Jets when I was with the Oakland Raiders. And he came into the office, and I said, okay, what do we got? And we broke it down because Rex Ryan called the defensive game on a 5x7 card. Well, there's only so many things that you can write down on that card, right? It's not a big card. It's not a big piece of it. It's not like those billboards that they have. Like you saw Andy Reid the other night. Those guys carry those billboards around with all those plays on them and stuff, okay? He has a 5x7 card. So what I did is I had the center in the line, I had them face the defense and watching the defensive personnel come on the field. So when they get into nickel, they're running these blitzes, okay? When they get into dime, they're going to run these blitzes. When they get into a 34 structure, they're running these blitzes. So it may be the same blitz, but they may run it with different people on the field.
Yep.
You know what I mean? The exact same pattern of the blitz, but with different personnel on the field. So if we knew what personnel was coming on the field, then we automatically did what you did. We put it into a little grouping that says, okay, guys, this personnel, you're getting these blitzes. Okay, now what do they get? What are your triggers to pick it up? And it's basically what you did. We ended up beating the Jets. It was the same concept that you're doing. I thought it was really good that you followed that concept, that you thought about and doing it that way. Now, I don't know, when was I with the Raiders? 2010 or 11, somewhere back there. You know what I mean? But that sounds right. That's, and you got to know, and you got to be studying. People kind of study just the blitz, right? You got to study the guy that's calling the game.
Yep.
You got to know who that defensive coordinator is, and you got to know who the people that are that surround them. So you got to get a feeling for what he does or what he likes to do. Who is that guy? Rex was calling a game. It wasn't the defensive coordinator. Rex was calling a game. So you got to figure out who's calling a game. Is the defensive coordinator calling a game? Is the head coach calling a game? Who's doing this? So that's what I tried to do, or the guys that were with me at the time. And you, 12 years later, you're doing the same thing or longer, which is, I believe, is the right course to take, Kyle. You're right on par with that thing now.
Coach, one of the things too is, so you get into the game week and you see things on film. And the game that triggered me from was a late in the season game around Christmas. But if you play a team in mid-season that maybe has a new coordinator, a new head coach, but they've shown quite a bit of things, you got to think, though, what's the next thing they're going to do from that? Because they also know what's on film and they self-scout. And it's just like we do on offenses. We self-scout and we say we've run too much under center, or every time this back is in, he's doing this, or all these cases. But so we started to look at, either I would do it or the line coach would do it, and we would make up the next thing we thought was coming that was logical. If they had gotten in the AA fronts and they had brought the two internal guys and twisted them or whatever, but then they had brought a fire zone from the field but none from the boundary, we would practice one from the boundary just in case. We would find one that was similar and set it up, and just to make sure that, hey, listen, we got that covered. We wouldn't go chasing ghosts, but at the same time, if it's a logical next step for, like you said, that coordinator. So like when we played Vance Joseph, when Cliff Kingsbury took over in Arizona in 19, Vance Joseph was his guy. Well, Vance, and there was no Arizona film for us, but I've known Vance for years. I worked with him in Cincy, and Vance does what Vance does. But we went back and looked at a lot of the stuff he'd done, and I'm like, well, he's done everything. So, but logically, what are they going to do in the first game of the year? And they've got certain packages, and you practice those. But I think that was the next step after seeing what you've already seen on film, was just answering a question of what's the next adjustment we may have to make in the game.
Yeah, you're solving the problem before it occurs.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing here, like the AA gap, and then and all of a sudden you're going to get the guy that's into the boundary, the backer that's up in the A gap into the boundary. He's trying to run to get out to the slot because they're bringing the slot or they're bringing the corner. You know what I mean? So, but they've never shown it. But that would be the next step to the AA gap stuff. And so,
yeah, and I think you mentioned. You mentioned you got together with your centers and you guys talked through all this stuff. And I mean, I think there's a fine line between chasing ghosts and being logical about, like, here's what this protection protects us from, and this is what it doesn't protect us from. And your quarterback should know that too. But and not having to just make something up and say, hey, they might do this, but hey, if they decide to flip this protection or flip this pressure, we just got to be ready with an answer.
I said this on the podcast a while back, that things you don't tell them are just as important as the things that you do tell them.
Yeah.
Because you can give them way too much information and really mess them up. And I'm not talking about just technique. I'm talking about the whole game plan. I need to be alert for this, and I need to be alert for that, and you need to be alert for the next thing you know, they need to be alert for everything that can possibly be put in the defensive playbook. You're going to mess that kid up big time.
No doubt. And that's where, I mean, you've seen it, I've seen it, that you oversaturate your game plan with too much stuff, and you never get good at anything. And your rules, your base rule is almost the exception. Instead of all the exceptions being the exception, your base rule is the exception. And it shouldn't be that way, but I mean, that's just how it kind of goes sometimes.
You're asking for trouble when that happens. So,
yeah,
it's when you were talking about, like, Joe Burrow, that poor guy. I mean, he was sacked 7 times.
I know.
That poor kid. I hope he makes it to his 3rd year. He may not get through his 2nd.
The amazing thing about that is, though, they had a -5 turnover ratio. He got sacked 7 times, and they still should have won the game. I mean,
yes.
If it wasn't for the long snapper being out, I mean, Clark Harris was out, and I mean, and that goes into a whole nother thing too. And it's a long snapper issue, I know, but what happens if your center goes out or your quarterback goes out, and you've got all these rules? Is the next guy gonna be able to handle all the crap you've already thrown at the starters, and having that guy ready for all the different crazy things we just had to put in this week. So if you oversaturate it, you run into that problem.
I always tried to make sure that the centers, when we met, I always had both centers and the quarterbacks there, so we were on the same page. We weren't going to get off that. We were going to meet before anybody else got into the building really early in the morning. Okay, we would go Wednesdays. Sometimes with some of the teams I've been with, Kyle, right? I went to the players and I said, look, guys, we need to get together on Tuesday. If you guys can come into the building on Tuesday, that would be real helpful. So on Tuesday, I would get them for like an hour. I said, come, you got to come and work out anyway. So let's meet for an hour, and then we'll go over everything that I have. And then we went over it on Wednesday morning, Thursday morning. And if I felt comfortable, I wouldn't, I'd let Friday go. But if I didn't feel comfortable yet with it, then we do it again on Friday morning. So if the second team quarterback was any good, he would be the first team quarterback,
No doubt.
So you don't want to get the first team quarterback knocked out and have to play with the second team quarterback. And now you got problems.
So as I hear you guys talking about this, one question that comes to mind, and directed to Kyle here, you talked about that week where, okay, we got to take a different approach to this. It isn't they're running this is their first best, this is their next best. And that's the way a lot of people do it. But as I'm thinking about how you've compartmentalized it, you also then create, I think, a system that's going to carry over from week to week because you're starting to look at things in a certain way. You've found the patterns that are going to repeat not just that particular week, but they're going to come up again later in the season. And then probably you have a system of answers that goes along with it too. So did you see a transition there in your teaching and how you were working with guys when you started to look at it more as a compartmentalized approach?
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head. It goes, you can use it from week to week because the defensive scheme from team to team, it changes, and maybe the speed of how they do things changes because they got better players maybe at one team than the other. But in all reality, you have guys to block them, and they got guys to rush, and those schemes go. Teams use it. It's a copycat league for one. I mean, somebody sees something work, they're going to try it until they see you stop it, and especially if they run something similar. So one of the things we did, Coach talked about meeting with his players early on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we always had since I was with Darrell Bevel for the last 3 years, 2 in Detroit and 1 in Jacksonville, and we always had a Wednesday, Thursday morning. This was like during. It was actually pre-special teams, and then the special teams guys would leave, and whoever was left in there, we kept going. But it was a protection meeting, and it was the first thing they had, and what we talk about the defense and what the structure was, and then we get into their pressures. And a lot of times I would say, hey, you remember our Green Bay game plan? Well, this is similar to that. Or you remember our Minnesota game plan? This was similar to that. So, and we gave them these notebooks, and if they were doing it correctly, which we always had to go check, but they could go game by game in these notebooks that they had, and they could, go back to the Minnesota game and look at their notes from Minnesota and try to, keep those. If it was something they already knew, don't go try to reinvent the wheel, just refresh them on it. And I feel like it did that. And then one of the things we did, I know, obviously I didn't get a second year in Jacksonville with what happened last year, but with my second year in Detroit, because we had a lot of the same guys kind of coming back, the off season was virtual and in 2020. So, you didn't get all the on the field work stuff that you were getting. But what we did was we went back on virtually and refreshed everybody on those topics and treated it as if we were having one of those meetings. And each day was on a different type of scheme, double A. One week was bear, 1 week was odd, spinner, 1 week was, just regular 4-down blitzes. But you had that ability once you had it installed. And that's why some of these teams have been together. Coach Wylie, some of these teams have been together for a long time, and you got the same guys you try not to get complacent with it, but at the same time, you're not having to reteach everything all the time. It's more of a refresher course, and then finding maybe better ways to do it.
Well, I was always amazed that the better, the smarter, I should say, that your centers are, or the easier it is to make the changes. Okay, because they understand. They understand where the blitz is coming from. They understand what the quarterback's looking at. They understand all the protections and how they work. Okay, and what the strengths and weaknesses are of protections. Those guys are the quarterback before the quarterback gets in the huddle. Those are the guys that you really rely on those guys. And during the game, okay, you rely on them because they're going to see it and they're going to know what's happening before you do as a coach. They're out there. So they'll be able to make the changes while they're in the huddle. Because, as you well know, you may have a 10-play drive. You're standing on the sideline or you're up in a box. You can't help them. There's nothing you can do to help them. They better be able to make the corrections and do that by themselves out there on the field. That's where I think, when they're prepared, like you prepare your guys, right, that's when it really shows up. Especially if you're playing a guy like Dick LeBeau. Dick LeBeau would run, because I was with Dick for a long time. What he used to do is run certain blitzes in the first half. Okay, well, you're figuring out what the blitzes are and how you're picking them up and all that stuff, okay? In the second half, he give you a completely different set of blitzes.
Yeah. We had that. We played them in Pittsburgh. Yeah.
I thought that was a really smart way to do it. It really is. Because here you are, as the coaching staff, you figure, okay, we got this one, they're going to do this one here, they're going to do this one here, and all of a sudden, second half, none of that stuff fits anymore because he's doing something entirely different than he did the first half. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to make your changes on the run, and but that's, like you said, the intelligence level. Yeah, I got one quick story about Matthew Stafford. You talk about being smart and savvy about what you were doing. And in 2020, when we had no fans, I was in Detroit, and I'd say 6 of our 8 games, we had literally nobody in the stands, and in 2 of them, we had 500 friends and family. So there was nobody there ever. And I can't remember who we were playing, but anyway, they had shown all these different blitzes and stuff. We were ready for it. They had the entire defense over to the left, and it was an overloaded front, and 2 other guys standing on the left. There was the one defensive end and maybe another safety about 10 yards deep, but he was arguing with the dime guy, and they were over there trying to figure out what to do and stuff. And Stafford just flips the protection. He moves the protection to the right all the way away from everybody on the left. And they sure enough, they rotated down right for the snap, and they brought a blitz from the right and come off the sideline and talk to the running backs for a minute and make an adjustment. So I'll walk over to the quarterbacks like I always did between series to find out if there was something I should relay down the line here for us. And I said, "Why did you flip that one protection?" I said, "What did you see?" He goes, "Oh, I didn't see anything. I heard them talking about it. They were arguing about who's blitzing, so I knew they were coming from over there." So, the pandemic.
Smart kids. You win with smart players, I tell you.
So the other thing I see in the realm of pass protection, blitz pickup, especially with how popular the simulated pressures have become, right, is a lot of times only 4 guys are rushing, and there's guys out there blocking air, right? And I think you see it more at the lower levels. The higher levels, guys know where to go and help. But it was a question that, as Coach Gruden was going over his presentation at the Cool Clinic and the different questions he's asking, he asked the one, "What's your system for help? How do you get help?" And interestingly enough, I was able to spend an evening with him watching ball at his Fired Football Coaches Association office there that he had in Tampa, and I was there recruiting, and so got to sit down with him, talk ball, and he showed a protection, a nudge protection, right, where the running back is chipping. I think he was showing maybe Sproles from the Saints at the time, and just getting into this defensive end and standing him up, and then going out into his route, and the tackle really doesn't have much to do but to decide where in the ribs he's going to hit him after this guy's been frozen and knocked from the side. So not only that kind of help, but the help of, all right, my guy didn't come, where do I go to help? Because I think that can be done incorrectly as well. I know the one thing, we had a situation where we had a young offensive line and a guy was going to help. He'd come right across the quarterback's face to help on the other side, right, a guard. And the quarterback's just seeing color. So that flash in his face, he's kind of freezing. You see his legs a little bit. He's, instead of going through his progression, he's thinking he's going to have to escape. So there's a lot of different ways you do it. But again, I think this goes to having some kind of system for it. So I'll start with Kyle here in your approach to teaching guys where to go and who gives help in certain places.
Yeah, I mean, let me start just because I've obviously been coaching running backs for a while. So let me start with that, and then I'll move into the line, and then Coach can take over with that because he knows a hell of a lot more than I do about that. But so I know Coach Wylie's also worked with Hugh Jackson, and I remember when I took over as running back coach for Hugh and he was coordinator, one of the big things he always said was the back releases through the B gap. And, I was like, okay, because I knew he had done that the year before and everything. And it's a slippery slope sometimes if TEs start happening or ETs, and because you don't want to touch the lineman, you don't want to knock the lineman off. But at the same time, there's really good 3 techniques, and that's usually where these, your Aaron Donalds and all those guys are. And I mean, we started, when the B gap was open, we could get out. I mean, we were going through and we weren't knocking the 3 technique off, but we were trying to slow them down. Get a little elbow in on him, and if he could get a shoulder under him and stop his feet, then we were trying to do that for our guards, and our guards knew that was happening. But I think too with the outside chipping, there's so many guys that these rushers, if you watch them, like Von Miller for sure, if he knows there's going to be chip help, you'll see him. He won't even try to go around the tackle. He's already got something in mind. He's got his other moves in mind, but we always taught those guys, and you can't practice it. That's the only problem with that. You can't. You can. I mean, you can find ways to get rib pads on people and stuff, but you don't want to hurt your own guys in practice. But we always taught those backs. You're going in and you're trying to take something out of that end, but not knock him off of the block of the tackle either. So there was a lot of work, and Coach, I'm sure you've done it, is the work between the tackle and the back, knowing that you've got chip help, so the tackle might adjust his set a little bit, knowing that. But the problem you get is, especially the younger backs, these idiots think, they just think they got help, and then they kind of go out and they just throw their arm up like, oh yeah, you saw it, I was thinking about it. Well, no, you gotta go hit the dude because the tackle's expecting you to hit him. Tackle's expecting you to slow him down or knock him off course. And it's like anything else. You can teach them to do something. They can tell you they're going to do it, but do they actually do it or what? Whatever. But those are the techniques we used, and then we started using tight ends as well, like in the wing position, and that was a little easier than a back out of the backfield because he's already there, and he could hit him before the tackle ever really gets close to him. But I know we had a lot of issues with, like you said, like say they bring a fire zone from the left and the right side, the defensive end and the mug linebacker both drop from the right side, so the right guard and the right tackle, it technically don't have anybody to block unless they come back and help. And I'll let Coach talk about it, but we always had to figure out from week to week, what was the help system? Is it drop out lookout, or is it drop out post back in? What were the issues of the week? So Coach, I mean, I'm sure you've seen that, a lot more than I have.
Some of the systems I've been around, you had the chip help from the backs, but I tried to tell the tackles, and the chips, because we put the chips into the nomenclature. We just didn't let the backs do it randomly, okay?
Yeah.
So we would say chip 60, or we would say chip 84, or whatever that was. And so we would, say, hey, you're going to get help on this play. But if the back's blitz responsibility comes, then that tackle doesn't have any help. Mm-hmm. So you had to kind of figure out if you wanted to change the tackle set or not. Most of the times I didn't, unless we had a good key that says, hey, that linebacker ain't coming by the contour of the defense. Okay, and I got chip help, so I can cheat a little bit here because I know I got a back coming with me, right? So you had to play those games with them. Then the other games you had to play with them is say that the formation, right? You got a one technique on the left guard, or the guy's in the A-gap weak. But you call the protection right. You got the center going right. The left guard and the left tackle, right? That left guard, he's in a bind. He's got a guy in the A-gap that he's responsible for, and your center's leaving. He's going right because he's got a one technique over there, the right guard. How do you work that? Okay, or he maybe have a two technique on the right guard. There's a one technique on the left guard. So we would have a call. We would say help. We would say my call would be Roger. Roger, help left, or help left, Roger. So he was telling the right guard, right, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to hit the one technique, and then I'm going to come back to your side. Okay, so I'm still going to have your inside. You're still protected, so do what you need to do. Okay, and I still have your inside, but I got to help my left guard. That was another way of helping, a guy inside. And you're right with Coach Jackson. You release through the B gap. We call it sideboarding.
Yep.
Well, if that guard knows that he's got help coming through the B gap by the back, well, he can do different things to the two technique and to the one technique, or even to the three technique, because he knows he has somebody coming through that B gap that's going to hit that guy. And if we had two backs and it was a three technique, we sent one through the B gap and we sent the other one through the A gap.
Yep.
Right. Now that three technique, he got no chance. Unless you blitz, he doesn't have any chance at all to get to the quarterback. Okay. So we did, when does the center go to the guard? When does the guard come to the center? And you have to figure all that. All those little details that nobody sees during the course of the game but the offensive line and the line coach. Okay? Nobody sees whatever we're doing with that stuff. Another thing that we did too, Kyle, and you've probably been around it, say we had 60 protection on or slide protection going to the left. They're playing under defense. But we know that the little linebacker ain't coming. He's not coming. So now we're taking the right guard and we're going 4 against 3. And all of a sudden we look out there and we got a Mike Sam fire zone contour. Right now you're sliding 4 against 2. Okay, because the little linebacker ain't coming. And the defensive end of that side's dropping. Okay? Yeah. So now you got 4 guys going against 2. So what we would do, because of the nature of how we call protect, or the concepts of the protection, if we had a slide protection on, that was we take the 4 down in the will, or we wanted the will to be. Okay? Yeah. We could change it to a solid concept and get back to the mic. So we would just, the line would say solid, solid. Okay, and they say, hey, we're going to the mic. We're not going to go to the will. Even though if the protection called us to go to, he ain't coming. Right? And the end's dropping, so we don't need to send 4 guys over there. Unless, of course, we were playing against Richard Dent, Bruce Smith, Reggie White. Then you really had to keep it on. But if you didn't have that, okay, or Aaron Donald, right? If you didn't have that, then you can change the protection and get back to the mic. Now, we told the backs, if they make a solid call and the guard's uncovered, you read it from outside in, not inside out. Okay, so now he's looking at the Sam first. So if it's a Mike Sam fire zone, he's picking up the Sam, we're picking up the Mike. Those other guys are dropping. The Will linebackers, he has to push to get to where the Mike is. Okay, and the defensive end is dropping. And now we're more solid inside. We're more firm inside. So we played those type of games with the defense a lot. And that's what you do, when you're taking these exotic pressures and you say, okay, how are we going to handle this week? What can we take and make it more firm or make it more solid for those guys up front and the back included to pick up what we're going to see? Because a lot of times, as you know, we come to the line of scrimmage, we call a protection. Actually, when we leave to go to the line of scrimmage, we're not really sure who we're going to pick up until we get there. Does that make sense? Because we may be changing everything at the line of scrimmage depending on what we see. Hey, guys, this protection isn't going to work. We need to get to this one. Or it's not so much the protection as, hey, he ain't coming. These guys are coming. We're going to go over here. Okay, and the quarterback has to be on the same page with the backs, and then they have to signal the receivers, all that other stuff. So you can talk about how you did that and against the exotic blitzes that you saw, in general, when we come to the line of scrimmage, you call protection in the huddle. When we get to the line of scrimmage, we're not sure who we're going to block until we get there. We know the rules of the protection when we're leaving the huddle. We know if it's a slide, we get the 4 down the will, or whatever we want the bill to be. If it's solid, we get the 4 down in the mic, blah, blah, blah. All that. We know the rule of the protection. But when we get to the line of scrimmage, say we had a solid protection call, we're taking a 4 down and a mic. When we get to the line of scrimmage and we see a will free safety coming, well, if you don't want to cross-read your backs like some teams do, then we need to change and we need to make the will the Mike linebacker. So now we need to go to the will as an offensive line. So now that's making a free safety the will for the back. And he's taking that guy. They're not going to send the Mike and the Sam if they're sending the will free safety. So the other back now has the Mike. He has the double read. He has the Mike and the Sam. Going to the line of scrimmage, that wasn't the protection. Right?
Yep. The line made their call, and we lived with it until the quarterback said something. But there were times, the quarterback missed it. I mean, like you're talking about the will free safety. I could think of one against the Vikings a couple of years ago. In Detroit, we had a backup quarterback in after Stafford got hurt, and he didn't flip it over, and he got blasted. Didn't have enough guys.
I remember that happened to me in Chicago. We were playing the 49ers, and Cade McDowell's the quarterback, right? And he comes to the line of scrimmage, so we always had the quarterback point. Okay, it takes these two. Okay, so we get to the line of scrimmage, right? And Cade makes the point. All right, and so we're going to say, okay, we're going to slide, we're going to go left, we're going to pick up whoever's short over here, and the ball snapped, and what Cade do? He looks to the left, okay, and those guys come off the edge, and they hammered them. Ball's up in the air, they recover the ball. So Cade comes running off the field, and he comes to me and says, who has those guys? I said, Cade, they're your guys. You pointed to them. You said it takes 2. So after the game, the media got me. They said, Coach, didn't you feel bad when the quarterback got hit like that? I said, no. They said, you didn't? I said, not at all. They said, why? I said, because it's a learning experience.
No doubt. And it goes to these younger quarterbacks, and you say, if it's a zero blitz or something, hey, quarterback, you're blocking, the add-on guy, the guy we can't block. That's your guy. You're blocking him with the throw. And I remember we had a quarterback actually ask, "What, block him with? Am I throwing the ball at him? Like, did you really just say that? We're blocking him with the throw." He literally thought we were saying throw the ball at him. So it's one of those things. I think we all know this is. Be careful what you said. It's the stuff you don't say, but be careful what you say, do, and the way you say it, because sometimes these guys, they don't know. They actually take you literally when you say things that you think everybody knows.
Well, they've all watched The Longest Yard. That's where they got that from.
Yeah. You really need to. Kyle is right. You really need to explain and make sure that they understand. Don't assume anything, as you know. Right, make sure that you detail it for them.
Well, looking at that side of it with the quarterbacks, and it was a great moment this past Sunday, the Sunday night game. They blitzed Tom Brady. They got to him, knocked him down. You see him on the sidelines. I mean, he's been in the league forever, and he's coaching those young linemen, getting them on the same page. And Kyle, you and I were talking about this. This is still about trust, and we could come up with all these great ideas, scheme it up on the board, have all the answers, but none of this matters if you don't have their hearts, right? That you have to build these relationships, and really, you have to fold the quarterback into this too, right? That guy's got to believe in the guys up front and trust that these guys got me. I can keep my eyes down the field. There's nothing worse than that quarterback who's in the pocket, who actually has some time but is jittery as hell because, maybe he's not played with these guys. Maybe he's young or whatever. So there's a lot to develop in that way. And I know you and I, before we got going, we were talking about it yesterday, actually, just the player-coach relationship. It's something that, you have to develop there, and then certainly carries it between those position groups as well.
Yeah. And one of the things I learned this kind of early on in my NFL career, like really early, like when I first got hired by the Bengals, I was a quality control coach. I was Paul Alexander's assistant online coach there. And Andrew Whitworth was on the team. And Andrew Whitworth, I was 31. I believe Whit was probably 29, and he'd already been an All-Pro and all that, and everybody knew who Whit was. And I remember asking him one day, just sitting around, I said, hey, what makes you listen to me? Why would you listen to something I'm saying? You're an All-Pro, here I am, a quality control coach that is your coach, is one of your coaches. And he said, well, can you help me get better? Can you help me do something maybe that can you help me prepare for a team? And I said, yeah, I can help you do that. And he said, that's what we want as players. We want to trust that what you're telling us is going to help us be better. And that led me later on to when I got my own room, when I moved over to running backs. There's times, and Coach Wylie, I'm sure you have the same thing, because things change. You know how it is. You leave on Tuesday night, and or whatever, and then somehow or another the coordinator or the quarterback coach or somebody comes in and they decide at midnight that they're going to change something, and sometimes it doesn't necessarily always make it down the hall, and. So my thing was, if I didn't know an answer to something, if a player asked me, or if I wasn't sure, and we were going through the install or whatever the case is, and I just didn't, I wasn't going to give them information that I didn't know was right. So I would I'd tell them, guys, I don't know. Let me go find out. Or guys, listen, hey, that's okay. We can get that fixed. I will, before we hit the field today, I will have an answer for you. And I would never give them something.
I do exactly the same thing. Exactly what you're talking about. Don't try to do that because players.
Yeah. Oh, they see through it too, especially the NFL guys. They'll see through it in a heartbeat. And I learned if you tell them something wrong, and I had this happen to me maybe once, maybe twice, not a whole lot of times, and a lot of times it was because something had changed and not gotten down the hall to me. But when you tell them something in a meeting, and then you go out on the field and you run the play and walk through or whatever the case is, and you didn't give them the right information, their trust level in hearing what you're saying in the next meeting is way down, and I never wanted that to happen. I didn't want to be the guy that players left out of there thinking, is he telling us, are we good here? Is this right? So I never want to be that guy. So I always made sure I knew the information first before I told them anything.
Good point. That's an excellent point for a lot of young coaches to learn that. Because if you don't know, you're trying to, and especially if you don't know and you give them the wrong information and somebody gets hurt, wow, look out for that one now. That's not good.
And Coach, I think a lot of coaches, especially younger coaches, like you're saying, or new coaches, think that they're supposed to act like they know everything to the players. And I never felt that way, because I'm a human being, and I'm not perfect. I'm not going to know everything all the time. I don't have the answers to everything. I'll admit to you that. And it's one of those things where if you act like you have the answers to everything, you probably don't have the answers to a whole lot, but it's one of those things where I think everybody's got to grow and everybody's got to learn and ask questions. Hey, Coach, let me ask you this too, because this came up when I was in Detroit on my backs. And number one, let me say this, and this leads me into it. I think the way you coach, everybody's held to the same standard of coaching and what your expectations are, but I don't think everybody is coached the same. And there is a if you have an older guy in your room, he may not need the individualized attention that the rookie's going to need or whatever. And it doesn't mean that you're trying to give that guy a break or anything, but you may have to give more attention to a certain guy. Maybe another guy just doesn't get it and he needs more attention. And everybody says, well, you coach everybody the same. And I don't think you coach everybody the same. I think your standard is the same. But, and that leads me into this is we had a back that had a bad knee, and we some of the coaches were like, no, he has to practice to play, or he's got to go through all the training camp practices. And so he got hurt in the first year I was there in 19 and missed a lot of the season. So in the off season, I finally talked everybody into, listen, when he gets back from the pandemic, we need to make sure we back off this kid, and yeah, I'm not saying he doesn't have to practice. I'm saying, but when he's out there, he doesn't need to be running 6 duos a day, He knows how to run duo. He needs to be in there for the protections and some of the pass routes or whatever things he needs to practice, and give him a couple runs here and there. But did you find that individualizing some of these things to your players, talking about trust, to make sure that they stay healthy so that they can last longer? Do you think that brought that closer to you?
Yes. I was very fortunate to coach Joe Thomas. Joe Thomas didn't practice on Wednesday and Thursday. Yeah. Joe went through the walkthrough on Friday, right? And he went through the walkthrough on Saturday, and he played on Sunday. Well, Joe Thomas can do that. I got a rookie at another position that can't do that. So you got to spend more time with that guy. I think what you need to do as a coach is you need to find out how they learn, because they all learn differently. Okay, are they tactical learners? Are they visual learners? Are they audio learners? How do they learn? And then you got to approach that kid differently than you would approach the other guy. For instance, I could tell Joe what I needed. Joe, I need this. He's got it. Mm-hmm. But then I may have to tell another player and show him and make him walk through it and make sure he understands it and put the bags on the ground, which everybody's done. You know what I'm saying? Right? Yeah, because that's what that kid needed. So you don't approach them all the same because they all learn differently. They don't all learn the same. So your approach to coaching has to be, I need to touch all the bases. And how do I find out how they learn, Kyle? What I would do is I would just ask them, what is the best way for me to coach you? Okay, coach, I need the reps. Coach, I can, when you put the film on and explain it, that's really good for me. Or, I can take it and bring it from the blackboard to the grass. So if you draw it up on the board, I got it and I can get it to the grass. Stuff like that. I think you're absolutely 100% correct. And the players, they know how good the other guys are. They know how J.C. Tritter, Joe Petonio, Joe Thomas, Kevin Zeitler. My God, that was a real good offensive line.
No doubt.
I could just really tell those guys what to do. J.C.'s a Cornell grad. He's been around a long time. He's Joe Petonio. Kevin Zeitler was the smartest guy, IQ-wise, on the whole team. The whole team.
Yeah. I was with him in Cincy. So I agree with that.
So, your approach to it, okay, number one, you have to know as a coach, how do I teach them a new skill? And there's a way that they learn stage 1, 2, until they get to the unconscious competence stage. You've heard me talk about that before. So there's a staging that goes that you have to put them through as a coach. Okay, but in that staging, you don't have to, are they audio, are they visual, are they tactical? How am I going to, can I yell at this kid? Or can I scream at him? Or do I just feed him sugar? Do I pat him on the butt? How am I going to do this? And so each one of them has an imprint that you need to get to make sure that he understands exactly what you're looking for. And there's no gray areas. And I think what you're saying is 100% correct. 100%. You're right on the right course with that one. Kyle, walk us through, okay, I'm going through the film. I got this now. And we got, I don't care what protection you use, but we need to tweak the protection in order to pick this blitz or dog up. Just walk us through one of them.
All right, so we had the, I believe Coach Gruden in the Cool Clinic called it double trouble. So it was the overloaded front, but they were double mugging the two linebackers on the other side of the line, so over the guard, in the A gap and B gap, away from the overload. Well, the problem we were having is they were putting an extra defender, like a safety, outside of that single defensive end on the opposite side of the overload. So what they're doing is they're trying to get you to take your entire your center for sure, turn them all the way over to those three guys that are down, and then all of a sudden you've got too many guys for your guard, tackle, and back over here because you really got 4 over 3 and all that. So what we were doing was, instead of saying like, okay, we're 60 protection like you were saying, and we're sliding to the left, backs on the right, the center's going to block the nose, guard blocks the left guard blocks the tackle, and the left tackle box in. Okay, so you're good there. Now, usually you say, okay, we're pointing at the mic or whatever, so that, the line, okay, now the right guard's going to block the first inside mug backer of the two, and then the back's got the second inside backer of the two. Well, what happens is they started reading the guard set, and whoever the guard set to, that got dropped. The other guy came, and they also brought the guy off the edge. So you were always, if you blocked it just basic man rules, you were screwed. I mean, you just couldn't do it. So we were telling those guards that they were going to set, basically vertical set, take the first one that comes, and then the back would then play off of him back, and then go to the outside. So the back's eyes would always have to start basically on the inside linebacker. Then the guard was also saying, so whoever came, the back would set in there, if they both came, the back would take the other guy, screw it, you're hot off the guy off the edge. They got you. But we started having to tweak that instead of just pointing and man blocking it and saying back, you're the dual read. It became the guard was the dual read and the back was playing off the guard, but it kind of was like they were both dual reading it. We actually called it a duel, believe it or not, but I'm sure you probably used that term too, but we flipped it because we knew that they were playing a game with us. So we decided to play the game back with them. And
right.
That's
so
just one. That's
your tackle.
Yeah.
Your tackle was locked up on the end, right?
He was locked on the end, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So years ago, some history for you, Kyle, because everybody uses the term duel, right? Years ago, okay, when we had the guard do a double read, say he went from Mike to Sam, and we would lock the end up, okay, we called that a molly.
Yeah.
Because the guard had to take, there was 2 L's in the word molly, and so the guard had to take 2 linebackers.
Yeah.
So what you did and how you approached it was really good thinking, really good idea, right? Insight, where the guard was taking 2 and the back was taking the other guy, whoever the guard didn't take. So that's what we would do with the back and the guard at a molly. So if we would call it rip and Liz, but the guard would be in a molly. So if the front inside linebacker came, the guard would take him and the back would go block Sam.
Yeah.
Right. So now we got it picked up. Okay. All you're doing is taking the Sam and putting them in the B gap. Right. So the guard's taking one and the back's taking the other one. It's amazing. I love it, Kyle. I really love it because it shows the game. We did that way back in the 80s. Okay.
Yeah.
And the game has evolved right back to that. And you guys did it in 2000s. How many years later? 20 years later, you guys were going.
and coach, the biggest thing too that I found was you had to understand that's what they were doing on defense. It wasn't just, oh, well, if this guy comes, this guy, we knew that they were reading the guard, but they were also, and Indianapolis was the team that did it to us last year, the best, is those 2 linebackers, because they knew that we were kind of doing that. They started stepping up really hard, both of them. So it gave you some indecision. So we had to even tell our guard, be more patient, because one of them was going to drop out of there the way they were doing it. But they were both stepping up there. So it was pulling the back up in there too. And then the guard would take one, and the back would have to peel out and go back outside and go get the other guy. So they were playing games with it. We had it picked up, but then you had to coach the technique of when you see this front, don't go flying up in there. Okay. This is one that we're going to tell you, you don't have to fly up in there. Usually with backs, you tell them to get up in there with the line and stuff. But with this one, it was like, listen, this one's tough. So, and that's just one example. And I mean,
that's a great example.
One last thing from me, when we would game plan, one of the biggest things that was on my plate was figuring out for each protection. So I'm a nerd. So I had like a spreadsheet that I would print out and I would handwrite it in these boxes. So it was like a grid with all our protections across the top, and then all the different issues that would go in there and stuff. So I would look at, say, your one back play action protection with a tight end staying in backside. So you're faking to the left, tight end's on the right, you're past 93 week or whatever, you look at those and you go, okay, what happens if they bring the safety backside? Does the back's got to go back or whatever? But can we re-ID it and all those things? So I'd take all that in there, but there'd be some protections, coach, and I'm sure you've done this too, that you just go, guys, we don't need to run this protection this week. This is just dumb. We can't. They got their guys. We're going to have a one-on-one that we don't want with a tight end, or this protection doesn't make any sense this week with what they're doing.
Right, or you're going to change the protection so much that it's impossible to practice all the new techniques you have to give them. And I'll tell you one thing,
I would go in.
We always go into a game with way too many protections in my little brain. You don't need half the ones you go into the game with. Right?
Yeah. But I just remember telling them, I would go in and say, do we have, because what it would be is the coordinator or the receiver coach or somebody would have a pass route drawn up. And it would be something off a play action where you're trying to throw over the linebacker's head or something. And they're like, yeah, I want to run this play action. Can we run the same route out of something else? Like, because they wanted the route so bad that they were willing to give the protection, put the protection at risk just to get the route off. And I never understood that because, you've got, like you said, the quarterback's the most important person. Why are you going to put him at risk just to get a 20-yard gain? Can we figure out a 20-yard gain somewhere else?
Right, exactly.
I don't know,
what I would do, Kyle, I in the protection meetings, right, I would look at the board, okay, and they would have all the passes written on the board like everybody else does, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So and then I would go through and I say, okay, we're using this protection one time to throw that one route, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Guys, we don't need that. Well, this is a sure touchdown. You're right. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's find a short touchdown with all these other ones, okay? Because we don't need to put them through this and practice that protection. How many times do we need to practice it during the week? And how many times you're going to need to throw that route? Why? We can use one of these other ones. Just erase that. Don't even do that. That's like, I'll give you a good example, Kyle, and this may help you down the road. Tom Moore, who I think was one of the best offensive coordinators ever in the National Football League, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Tom Moore, every day, you have everything up on the board. So every day they'd run plays, they come back to the offensive meeting room, and they put a W next to it. It was on Wednesday. And they would put a T next to it if they ran it on Thursday. And they would put an F next to it if they ran it on Friday. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the walkthrough on Saturday, they would put an S. Okay?
Yeah.
And then he would start to finalize his game plan, his call sheet. And he'd go back to that board. And if they don't have it practiced that week, he erases it.
Yeah.
He takes it off the board. It's not going to be on the game plan. Okay? I thought that was really good.
We did a lot of similar things like that with Darrell Bevel, and I know if we had not practiced it through Friday, because Friday was a red zone day for us, and you actually couldn't get all your red zone plays practiced, and so we would you'd go through and you'd figure out, like, shoot, we only walked through this play. We didn't get enough practice with that one, and even if we did walk through it or whatever, it's just, you know what, man, that practice rep we had, that thing looked bad, and we'd X that one off, and and it did clean it up, but at the same time, my point was, there were some Sundays you go in and you're spending more time reminding your dudes about, hey, here's one protection, all right, if this play gets called, just, hey, if you don't, I always told the back sometimes, hey, listen, you may not get out on this one, even though you could get out. Just make sure everything's good before you leave,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. One year we self-scouted ourselves. We learned this the hard way. One year we self-scouted ourselves. And at the end, we put all the plays up on the board. We had all these big rooms with all these whiteboards. So every play we called that year, we put up on the board. And then if we only called it one time, we put a red dot next to it. If we only called it one time, we had 138 plays that we only called one time. I said, guys, that's 2 games. That's 2 games. We don't need to do this to the kids. This is crazy, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we got a little bit smarter. We used to say, hey, anytime we would try to think of running something else, let's run 16 one more time.
Yeah. Hey, remember those red dots? Remember those red dots?
Right, so, well, let's do this and we'll do that, and then we'll trap this guy. Now, let's run 16 one more time, guys.
Yeah.
And Sam, God rest his soul, I love him dearly. He was one of the best head coaches that I have ever worked for. And he was good at coming in, late on a Tuesday night and drawing some weird old running play up on the board. Right, and he'd look at us, and then we'd shake our heads and said, Sam, we're going to run 16 one more time. And then he'd erase it, and he'd leave the room.
Well, that's some great stuff here, guys. Coach Wylie, I love just sitting, being a fly on the wall for these conversations and hearing you guys tell the stories, but bring up some incredible coaching points and things to learn from as well. And Kyle, we certainly appreciate you taking the time and being here on the podcast with us.
I would tell the listeners, guys, go to Coach YouTube and get Kyle's video, because that is going to help you. It is really going to help you with the blitzes and stuff. I thought that was one of the best presentations that I've heard and that I have seen in many, many years. So I would highly recommend, right, that especially you young guys and even the older guys, go get it and watch it and write down what he's talking about, because it's only going to help you. He's one of the best guys doing this stuff.
Appreciate that.
Kyle, I appreciate you coming on and listening and sharing ideas and information. I always tell, and people ask, why do you do this? Morally, as I came up through the ranks, okay, Pop Warner, junior high school, college, football, pro football, all that stuff. Okay, people helped me. I didn't do it by myself. Somebody helped me along the way. So it's only morally correct for me to help somebody else. I don't care if it's a Pop Warner coach, junior high school, it doesn't matter. Help the profession. Help these guys get better at coaching. Okay, so the players get better. Okay, that's really what my philosophy is. Help other people. It's okay to help other people. All right, and then I think you do the same thing. You can help somebody else.
Try. Yeah.
Help them.
Well, thank you to both of you for taking the time and helping coaches out there. It's means a lot just to be able to share these conversations with coaches. So, again, Coach Wylie and Kyle, thank you again for taking the time and being here to help coaches.
Yes, sir.
Oh, you're welcome. God bless you guys. Kyle,
hey, you too.
Good talking with you again, buddy. Stay in touch.
I will. Always good to talk to you too, man. Thank you for having me on.